At some point in Naruto, power levels just went from believable to completely busted. Characters evolved from barely damaging water tanks to slicing off mountaintops and blowing up villages. The escalation in the power ceiling was drastic to say the least, but when exactly did it get to that point? As in, when did Naruto's power system evolve to the point of summoning meteors and casually dropping nukes? And why did it happen? Well, the answers to those questions somewhat varies. You see, the popular opinion is that this all began in the war, when Madara first unleashed his perfect Susanoo, and with just the swing of his blade completely wiping away mountaintops. Others believe that it's when Naruto tanked a literal nuke detonated by the Ten-Tails, which is totally understandable, but I still beg to differ. You see, Naruto's power scaling was already on its way to being absurdly overpowered by the time they returned from the time skip. And no, I'm not referring to Naruto's giant Rasengan, which by itself was a drastic increase in destructive capacity. I'm more so alluding to Naruto's fight versus Orochimaru at the Tenchi Bridge. Most people don't remember the insane scale of this fight. This is when Naruto first transformed into his four-tailed state, at least on screen. Mind you, Naruto simply entering this form was enough to form a massive crater on the ground and send shockwaves throughout the entire forest. Even a single swipe from his hand made it seem as if a huge bomb went off, decimating Orochimaru's army of snakes. Not to mention his actual Biju bomb, where the weight of the attack was enough to shatter the ground below him, then wiping out a giant section of the forest itself. Before now, we've never seen anything like this. Yes, we've seen kaiju-sized monsters going at it in part 1, and even large-scale explosions in the final valley, but nothing compares to the raw destructive power shown in this fight, and it really just continued on that path going forward. I'm sure no one forgot Sasuke's fight versus Deidara, because this was the first time we saw something akin to a nuke going off in Naruto's manga. A blast radius as wide as 10 kilometers. That's over 6 miles. Like, that's hydrogen bomb levels of destruction. That too from minor characters in early Shippuden. Now we also had Naruto's Rasen Shuriken, which was definitely a downgrade from a nuke going off, at least when it comes to AoE, but it was impressive nonetheless. This signified Naruto's first step towards actually catching up to Sasuke, which was kinda funny since Kishimoto followed this up with the introduction of Kirin. I believe this was the first time we saw someone wield the natural elements in this way. And while it's true that this isn't Sasuke's chakra per se, so it's not really indicative of the strength of the characters themselves, but it's still an insane feat. I mean, shaping natural lightning into the form of a dragon and wielding it as an extension of himself is something you'd expect from Sasuke, and the damage caused by the ability was nothing to laugh at either. Mind you, the natural elements in Naruto are a tad bit overpowered because this same jutsu was able to bypass Naruto's Kurama avatar and knock him down briefly while he was in 6-path Sage mode, so it's not surprising that it would be able to do that amount of damage. By the way, speaking of natural elements, we then transitioned to Naruto mastering Sage mode, which kinda signified another escalation in the power system. He was now able to spam giant Rasengans and the very Rasen Shuriken that was deemed too dangerous for him to use. This also had some consequences because, of course, if Naruto's power level has risen to this level, the villain must also be one step ahead. Thus, one of the most iconic scenes in the history of anime and manga. I remember this happening and the total shock everyone felt, both in universe and from the audience. Pain didn't need to make any self-sacrificial play like Deidara did. All it took was the flick of his wrist and the entire village was wiped out in an instant. At this point, the stakes are starting to rise. Villains are creating planetary constructs, tail beasts are casually firing nukes, and characters you never took serious suddenly have the power to shake entire islands with the air pressure created by the strength of their fist. I mean, let's be honest, who expected Might Guy of all people to have one of the most impressive feats in the entire manga, which by the way isn't even his best. Not to mention one of the most BS attacks I've ever seen in the history of this medium. which of course is Conan's 600 billion paper bombs. Like, I want you guys to understand how absurd this is. This panel doesn't say 6 or 60 billion, which by the way is crazy in and of itself, but this thing says 600 billion. Even to this day, I still have no idea how she set this up for Obito. Did she just fill the sea with paper bombs and hid them beneath the water surface? Or did she fill it with paper bombs and had them transform into water? I have no idea. All I know is that this attack itself was just ridiculous. Now, you think this was the height of madness in Naruto's manga, but that's when we enter Madara. You see, as with Pain that came before him, he had to upstage the prior villain. And if we've already done nukes, one-tapping villages and creating large satellites, what is the next step? How can we make Madara seem like a bigger threat than the prior villain? Well, the answer of course is dropping not just one, but 2 meteors on the planet. And I remember this because it has one of my favorite lines from Madara, which comes after Kabuto claims that Madara is able to achieve a piece of the Sage of Six Paths power, thanks to the power he built into him. But Madara then scoffs at this and says, "Do not misunderstand. This is not power of your creation." And I just love that line, especially in English. But anyways, he then activated a 4-armed, double-faced, semi-humanoid Susanoo, but this time it's doing hand signs, different ones on each end. We then switch to the rest of the shinobi looking towards the heaven in awe and fear at the same time. We as the audience have no idea what's happening as yet, but the sense of dread was so palpable you could feel it. This was better captured in the anime, of course, since you could better feel the weight of the moment by the camera slowly panning outward to show us the scale of the attack, that being a giant meteor from space. And I think Gaara encapsulates this the best when he says, "Is this God's power?" Which, I don't know man, that's just crazy. But yeah, everyone started to panic and some even gave up entirely, trying to escape the inescapable. Onoki then steps up and flies towards the meteor, telling everyone that they must do something no matter how small. Naruto then questions what he's trying to do and the Stone Ninja says he's going to make the meteorite lighter and stop it. Onoki then slams into the celestial body, applying his lightened boulder technique onto it. He then managed to stop the meteor from making impact with the help of Gaara's sand, thus saving everyone from total annihilation. We all thought it was over at this point in time, but Madara then commends him, calling him a capable shinobi, and everyone starts to cheer. That is when Madara then says, "Now, what are you going to do about the second one?" All of a sudden, another meteor comes crashing in from outer space, colliding with the first one, decimating the battlefield. At this point, you're like, what can these ninjas do about something like this? Is a person like this even beatable? Well, that's when we enter Hashirama. This dude was so overpowered that he was able to spawn a 1,000 hand Buddha statue that was so huge he was able to pick up Madara's fully grown Ninetales cloaked in his perfect Susanoo like it was nothing. This thing was around 6 to 7 times bigger than all the mountains that surrounded it, and he was able to summon it with no trouble whatsoever. Before this, we were all confused at the thought of Madara losing to Hashirama. I mean, this is the same guy who wiped out multiple mountains by simply unsheathing his sword. Madara even claimed that it had the power to smash all things in this universe, which of course depends on perspective. In any case, the power ceiling just kept going up from there. We have Might Guy bending space itself, Naruto's Ultra Big Ball Rasengan, Ten Tails Cataclysm, and even Infinite Tsukiyomi that genjutsus the entire planet using the moon. Which, by the way, we later come to find out that the moon was created by the Sage of Six Paths, who is also the offspring of an alien. Mind you, she's even more powerful than Hagoromo, so of course tradition must be followed, and since Hagoromo created the moon itself, she must do one better. And that of course was her creating multiple dimensions with planets and stars. She's even stated to have the power to destroy and create entire time spaces, which at this point puts her far above anything we've ever seen before. Not too much on my guys Naruto and Sasuke of course, because Indra's Arrow and whatever Naruto calls this are top tier jutsus with immense destructive power, just not on this level. Also, they did break the rule with the new villain doing crazier stuff, because the best feat Toneri has is cutting the moon in half, which while impressive wasn't that crazy given what we saw before. So by the end of the series, all of this was pretty casual. We're now used to Tail Beast bombs destroying mountains and a single attack from one entity going off like a nuke. The best one of course being from the Ten Tails, which sounded like what a nuke would sound like, by the way. Mind you, this escalation didn't just affect the destructive capacity of these abilities, but also the nature of the abilities as well. I mean, we now have a jutsu that rewrites reality, clones that exist on a different plane of existence, and the Renegon that pretty much does whatever Kishimoto wants it to do. And to be honest, I enjoyed it. I love the growth in the power system and how certain techniques were expanded upon to add more depth to what was initially established. I love the fact that we can feel the increase in power from the characters, because this is depicted on screen. We're not left to assume that the characters must have gotten stronger, because the world reflects this. And I know that some people disagree. I mean, that's where the entire thing about "I miss when Naruto was about ninjas" notion comes from, right? I'm not gonna pretend to not understand what people mean when they say this, like I've seen most people do. Yes, Naruto is never about your typical ninja. Clearly, we always had the fantastical element even back in part 1. Naruto literally had a kaiju battle at the end of the Chunin exams. So clearly the story was always a bit more than ninjas throwing kunai. With that said, I think what people mean by that criticism is that it kinda leaned more towards the kaiju-esque battle as the story went along, which is true. Now, do I have a problem with it? Absolutely not, but I can understand why others would. Those say that you guys are the reason why the fights in Boruto are low-scaled compared to what it was in Shippuden, and the funny thing about this is that you aren't even reading Boruto, which is just crazy. With that said, that is it for the video. If you guys liked it, drop a like and also consider becoming a subscriber. By the way, if you guys want to learn more about Naruto's most broken jutsu he only used once, by the way, check out this video or watch the other one. I don't know, it should be something interesting. But yeah, I'll see you guys soon. Peace.